Before you could just type anything into Google, how did you find a single book in a library that had millions of them? Well, for more than 100 years, the answer wasn't an algorithm. It was a machine made of wood and paper, the card catalog. And trust me, it wasn't just some dusty old piece of furniture. It was the most powerful search engine of its time. So let's dive into how this incredible analog machine organized the world's knowledge.
And this question from a Reddit user really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures this huge generational gap. For anyone born in the digital age, the card catalog is, well, it's a total mystery, right? It's like something out of an old black and white movie. But understanding how it actually worked tells us so much about this timeless struggle to organize information.
So here's what we're going to cover. We'll look at the original problem, this wilderness of books, then the simple idea that sparked a revolution. We'll see how it grew into a massive standardized empire, why it eventually collapsed, and finally, what that big shift from physical to digital really means for us today.
Okay, so to really get why the card catalog was such a big deal, you have to understand the problem it was designed to solve. And it wasn't just about finding one book. It was about trying to navigate a whole sea of information without drowning.
I love this phrase, a wilderness of books. It just perfectly captures the feeling, doesn't it? Imagine walking into a massive library with no map, no guide, just shelves forever. That was the reality for centuries. We think information overload is our problem, something from the digital age, right? Nope. It's a challenge as old as writing itself.
So, how did people try to fix this? How did early scholars and librarians even begin to bring order to all this chaos? Well, for thousands of years, they tried to create guides and maps for this wilderness with, let's just say, varying degrees of success.
And this quest for order goes way, way back. Look at this timeline. One of the earliest examples we have is a tiny Sumerian cuneiform tablet from around 2000 BC. Then you fast forward to 1548, you've got these massive projects like Conrad Gesner's attempt to catalog basically all known books. And by the 1600s, the most common solution was a bound shelf list, which was really just a big book whose only job was to list all the other books in the library.
And check this out. This is Gesner's incredible attempt from 1548 to map all human knowledge. He created this tree of knowledge with 21 main categories. It's a brilliant idea, but it's also completely rigid. Once you print it in a book, that's it. It's fixed. So what happens when a new book comes out that doesn't quite fit into your system? You're stuck. And that was the fundamental flaw with all these early systems. A bound catalog, a list in a book, is static. It's basically impossible to update without redoing the entire thing. But a modular system where each piece of information is on its own separate card, well, that's dynamic. You can add new cards, you can resort them, and this is the absolute key. You can file copies of the same card in different places, letting you search by author, by title, and by subject. This was the game changer.
This idea seems so simple to us now, right? Putting one book's info on one card. But it wasn't just an improvement, it completely changed the game. It was a total paradigm shift in information technology. And believe it or not, it has a surprisingly dramatic origin story.
Okay, picture this. It's 1791. It's the height of the French Revolution. The new government has just seized these massive libraries from nobles who fled the country. They have to inventory everything, but there's a huge paper shortage. So what's their brilliant solution? Playing cards. They were all the same size, they were sturdy, and they were everywhere. Scribes just wrote the book's details on the blank back, and just like that, they created what was basically the first national library card catalog with over 1 million cards.
And the power of this modular idea wasn't just for huge national libraries. Individual scholars started creating their own personal versions. What you're looking at here is an excerpt cabinet from the 18th century. You can basically think of it as a physical version of Evernote or Notion, a personal knowledge database for organizing all your notes and ideas.
This lawyer, Johann Jacob Moser, was an absolute master of this technique. He figured that without his system of slip boxes, he probably would have only published about half of his 500-plus books. Can you imagine? He could literally rearrange his ideas, build out new arguments, and create entire books just by physically moving his notes around. It was his personal search engine and his content creation tool, all in one.
So while the idea itself was born in Europe, it was here in the United States where the card catalog was professionalized, standardized, and scaled up into the massive system that dominated libraries for a solid century.
And it really came down to 3 key figures. First, you had Charles Cutter, who was all about the user. He basically defined what a catalog should even do to be helpful.
Then you had Melville Dewey, who was all about the system. He standardized everything from the size of the cards to the decimal system itself. And finally, there was Herbert Putnam, who was all about scale. He's the one who took the whole thing national.
And this right here was Putnam's masterstroke. See, the Library of Congress had the best catalogers in the world. So starting in 1901, they just started printing extra copies of their cards and selling them to other libraries for next to nothing. This was absolutely revolutionary. All of a sudden, a tiny public library in the middle of nowhere could have the exact same high-quality, standardized catalog as Harvard. It created a national system and saved libraries an unbelievable amount of work.
So let's actually walk through it. Imagine you're a researcher back in 1980. You'd walk up to this giant wall of drawers and start at the subject catalog. Let's say you're looking for air pollution. You'd pull out the A drawer and you'd flip past agriculture and aeronautics until you found your topic. And the really cool part was right there on the card. You'd see other related subjects like smog. That's your cross-referencing, your related searches. You'd scribble down the call numbers on a scrap of paper, and then you'd head off into the stacks to start the real hunt. It was this physical, tactile process of discovery.
But for all of its brilliance, the card catalog had a fatal flaw. Its greatest strength, the fact that it was physical, was also its greatest weakness. The system was basically destined to collapse under its own success.
I mean, just think about this. By the 1950s, the catalog at the Library of Congress alone had over 9 million cards. 9 million. They were stored in more than 10,000 trays, and it just kept growing every single day.
The problems were just piling up. The cabinets themselves took up enormous, really valuable floor space. The sheer labor of typing, duplicating, and filing millions of cards was just immense. And there was a time lag. A book might be checked out or lost, but the card wouldn't reflect that for weeks. And of course, every single librarian from that era has a horror story about dropping a full drawer and watching 1,000 perfectly alphabetized cards just explode across the floor. An absolute disaster.
So, as this old analog system was groaning under its own weight, a new technology was quietly emerging on the horizon, one that promised a database that took up zero physical space, could be updated instantly, and could be accessed from pretty much anywhere.
This ad just illustrates the whole transition perfectly. It's an early ad for the Lycos search engine, and it uses a Rolodex, another kind of card-based database, as its main image. The ad copy says it all. If you search the internet, you need to have the right tool. It was a clear signal that the era of physically flipping through cards to find information was officially over. Now, the shift to digital catalogs in the 80s and 90s was inevitable, and let's be honest, in a lot of ways, it was a huge improvement. But it's really worth taking a moment to think about what we might have lost when we traded all those drawers for a search bar.
The gains are obvious, and they're immense. You've got remote access, keyword searching, knowing in real time if a book is checked out, getting access to entire university systems. It's amazing. But we did lose something too. We lost that tactile sense of knowledge, literally feeling the weight of a subject by how thick its stack of cards was. We lost the joy of happy accidents, of stumbling on a treasure you weren't even looking for.
We also lost all the little human touches, right? The little layers of history left behind by people who came before us. One librarian remembers finding the card for a controversial book by William F. Buckley. A previous reader had, in a little moment of editorializing, penciled in a single word right on the card: bullshit. It's this tiny trace of a real person's reaction, a little ghost in the machine that you would never ever find in a sterile digital record today.
And this idea of serendipity is so important. When you were physically flipping through cards, your eyes would wander. You'd see the card before the one you were looking for and the one after it. You might discover a whole new author or topic completely by accident. Now, online keyword searching is incredibly efficient, but it can also be like looking at the world through a keyhole. You find exactly what you typed in, but you totally miss the entire room of context that's surrounding it.
Ultimately, the tools we use to find information are never neutral. They actually shape the kinds of questions we ask and the kinds of answers we find. The card catalog encouraged a slower, more physical, and more serendipitous kind of discovery. And that leaves us with a really big question. In our age of algorithms and instant results, how is our vast, invisible digital catalog shaping the way we think and the way we learn right now?